Martin Truex Jr. is finally back in victory lane. Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon look like a force to be reckoned with, and tempers flare. Let's talk about NASCAR's Los Angeles clash at the Coliseum. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host, Alex Lambert, and let's talk about the clash at the Coliseum, NASCAR's first race of the year. We have a few positive things to talk about, a couple of negative things to talk about following this race, but I'm just excited to finally be talking about some racing. We haven't seen any racing since November of last year, and it's been a long winter, but we're here. We're finally back, and I'm excited to be back in front of the camera talking about a race. I miss this feeling on a Sunday night talking about NASCAR. It's fantastic. Let's go ahead and get right into it. The first thing I want to talk about is going to be the winner of this race, Martin Truex Jr. And this is Martin Truex Jr.'s first win in quite a while. This is a big deal for Martin Truex Jr. I think more than some people realize. I've said this plenty of times in the past with multiple different events, but even though this is not a points race for Martin Truex Jr., 2022 was his worst season in a long time, his worst season ever with Joe Gibbs, his worst season with the Toyota. Truex Jr. did not meet his standards last year whatsoever in that 2022 season. Missed the playoffs, didn't get a single win. I can go on and on and on about how bad his year was last year, but to get a win in any form, I've even said this about winning the pole in the Daytona for the Daytona 500. It is a confidence booster. You get a trophy, you get the media attention, you get back in victory lane. It is a major confidence booster. We saw it last year. Joe Logano won the Clash, came in 2022 last year and won the championship, and we see that effect a lot. Winning a race in any form, whether it's a points race or not, can definitely boost the momentum for Martin Truex Jr. For this upcoming NASCAR season starting on February 19th at Daytona. So I know that sounded like an advertisement, but it really will. It really could help his season a ton. And it also shows speed. It shows the rest of the field that, hey, I got the speed here. I know he had the speed last year and had a lot of unfortunate situations, but he's showing that, hey, we're still a powerhouse team. We can still win these races. This is Martin Truex Jr.'s first win. He hasn't won a points race, and I guess this streak continues even after tonight, but Truex hasn't won a points race since Richmond 2021. I was actually at that race. He stole that from Kyle Busch. I remember that very well, but he has not won a race since then, and that is not the Martin Truex Jr. we're used to seeing or used to talking about. So long winless streak for Martin Truex Jr. I think it will come to an end this year. I think he could have a really good season. We saw the speed last year. But we need to talk about the Clash, not the upcoming season so much in this video, but I did want to mention that I think it's a really big deal for Truex Jr. to get this win. For many aspects. Let's talk about a few other things. I'm going to go through the top 10 here in a minute. So I talked about your winner, Martin Truex Jr. I want to talk about your second and third place finish. They were on the podium tonight, a podium finish for those three drivers. Austin Dillon and Kyle Busch are now teammates. This is technically their first race as teammates, and I was astonished by the amount of teamwork that was in that organization. I was impressed by how much they were working together. Even at the end of the race, they were standing next to each other in the same interview. You don't see that with all these teams. You don't even see this with some of your powerhouse teams. That to me shows that Austin Dillon and Kyle Busch are working really well together. The chemistry's there. Kyle Busch seems happy. I know he gets a little frustrated in practice yesterday. He got a little bit frustrated during the race today. That's just Kyle Busch in a race car. But I think the chemistry's there, and this could be a really dangerous team. From what I saw today, the way those two guys work together, it was insane. We've seen in other series like the Truck Xfinity where, teams will work together, and that can really mess up some of the other guys. The teammates working together can really help drivers and help that team win races. And I think that's what you could see with RCR this year. Like I said, I was impressed by how well they work together. Even at the end of the race, Kyle Busch knew he didn't have a chance to win it. He knew he was most likely not going to be able to catch Martin Truex Jr. in the closing laps, so he let his teammate Austin Dillon by. He knew Austin Dillon was faster, which he obviously was. Everybody watching saw that Dillon's car was racing a little bit better than Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch was still probably a top 5 car, no doubt, but he knew that Austin Dillon had a better car, let him go by. You don't always see that. And, man, they were working well together the entire race, except for the start of the race. I thought they had a little contact at the start, but, trying to let each other in, even if they couldn't do it, trying to let each other in and still racing hard, that could be a team to reckon with. That could be a force to reckon with this upcoming season. So definitely keep an eye on those two, but those two worked really well together. Let's go through the rest of your top 10 just real quick. So I mentioned the top three already. We had Alex Bowman, who had a pretty decent night. He was getting pretty aggressive. Definitely, showed that he has some strengths tonight. Getting a top 5 finish, finishing fourth. Kyle Larson kind of stayed under the radar most of the night, just kind of hung up in the top 10 for most of the event, most of the evening. Didn't really have any trouble, didn't really run into anybody, didn't get run into, at least from what we saw. Didn't get spun, I guess. I'm sure he got run into, and he run into plenty of people, but didn't get spun around like a lot of other drivers up front did, especially at the end of it. So a solid 5th place finish for Kyle Larson in this clash. And just remember, finishing 5th or 6th really doesn't matter in this race. This is all about winning, but does kind of show, hey, we have some speed. Kind of like bragging rights or something of that nature. But like I said, this isn't a points race, so 5th place really doesn't matter too much. Tyler Reddick, first race for Toyota, first race for 2311 in the 45 car. 2311 Racing today had a pretty solid day. Bubba Wallace was really fast until he got spun. I'll obviously talk about that in a little bit. So we had Tyler Reddick with a 6th place finish in the 45 Toyota, so a pretty decent day for him, a good run for him. Ryan Preece, actually, I think I talked about him in a video a few weeks ago. Ryan Preece getting a 7th place finish. This is his first time being in a Cup car in any sort of race situation in quite some time, in a couple of years. And he might have raced a couple of races last year, but full time, he's back full time this year. I think he could be a real threat this season for Stewart-Haas Racing. He's an up and coming driver. He's still fairly young, so he's getting ready to reach his prime. Typically your prime age wise. He's got some of that Cup experience. He's raced, I believe this is going to be his 4th full-time season. He's got a lot of Xfinity experience. I believe he's raced a few part-time starts, made a few starts in the Cup Series, maybe last year, a few years before that. I think Ryan Preece could really be a guy to watch this season for Stewart-Haas Racing. If he gets the guys to back him up, get some good equipment, he could really be a threat this year. It'd be fun to watch him. But a solid 7th place finish for him tonight in the clash. Definitely excited about that. We'll see what he can do in the future. Ross Chastain, didn't see too much from him except him once again running into Denny Hamlin. Those two just constantly go back and forth. And every time I talk about Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin battling out and running into each other, Ross Chastain always beats Denny Hamlin, whether it's by one spot or 100 or a bunch of spots. It doesn't matter. And Ross Chastain once again finishes above Denny Hamlin, as you see Denny Hamlin's in ninth there. I feel like that's a very common theme. Seems like Hamlin's always right behind Ross Chastain, which is absolutely hilarious. Because they're rivals, and it's really fun to watch those two bump and bang. We know they don't like each other too well, especially we know Denny Hamlin doesn't like Ross Chastain. We'll continue to see how that unfolds for the rest of the season. And then, of course, William Byron, who was really fast in his heat race, really fast in practice, got a solid 10th place finish. But like I said, points don't matter in this race. There are no points in this race, so does the finishing result really matter a whole lot? Not really, outside of bragging rights. But let's talk about a few other things that unfolded in this race at the end of the race. I wanted to mention that Bubba Wallace was really fast in this race as well. Like I said, that 2311 team was super fast for this entire race. Bubba Wallace was showing some muscle there. He led a majority of the laps. I think he led close to 40 laps, maybe over 40 laps. I saw a stat they shown where he had led 33 laps of the race, and he led a lot of laps after that, or a handful of laps after that. So Bubba Wallace was having a great run until Martin Truex Jr., the other Toyota, kind of moved him out the way, bumped him out of the way. And then Austin Dillon, as you see here, Austin Dillon came through, and this is under 10 laps to go, or maybe this was 10 laps to go. Gives Bubba a pretty hefty bump there, and Bubba goes spinning up into the wall. He was upset. Rightfully so. Also, Dillon said in his interview that he'd gotten run into 3 times at least by Bubba Wallace, and he was trying to save the race car, so he felt like he wanted to, return the favor, give him a little bit of a harder bump. He even said maybe that was too much. Austin Dillon did, but yeah, Bubba Wallace was upset. You see here after the race, or after the accident, this was still, obviously, the race was still going on. Bubba Wallace cuts down in front of Austin Dillon. Not too big of a deal there. Didn't tear up anything. I think just showing his displeasure. I think that's fine. I think that's okay. I don't think that's, insane. I think he was just showing his displeasure. We see that a lot from all NASCAR drivers around the league, obviously. So definitely a little bit of controversy there. That was not the only tempers flared, by the way. We also had Denny Hamlin and William Byron. We know they've had some run-ins last year at Texas. They had a run-in last year in the second Texas race. Apparently, William Byron wrecked Denny Hamlin following the race. Hamlin went over to him. I saw where some people from the grandstands posted William Byron, Denny Hamlin talking in the infield after the race. So interesting to see what was said there. Obviously, nothing too serious. But I do want to talk about one thing, and I did say at the beginning of the show that there were some positives, there were some negatives. I want to talk about something that was a bit negative about this race that I think we could fix moving forward if we continue to race at the Clash. I know we will next year, and we could for years in the future now. Is one thing. This race was sloppy, and there was a report from Jeff Gluck on Twitter. You can take a look at it. Kyle Busch actually stated, according to Jeff Gluck, that this was just disrespect from drivers. They were just running through each other, and that's not okay. This gives me Indianapolis road course vibes from last year where everybody was just kind of dive bombing into each other. I don't like that. It looks really sloppy, kind of like the Indy road course did last year, a points race, and it just doesn't look good. All the cautions we had well over 15 cautions in this race. I don't know the exact number, but I know it was well over 15. Might have been closer to 20, over 20. Way too many cautions for such a short race. 150 lap race around a quarter-mile track. Should not have all these cautions. There were some reports I saw where the drivers and teams were concerned about running out of gas because all the caution laps. That would have been absolutely terrible if we had got that far. Luckily, we didn't. Got some great green flag action in. But I think NASCAR could take a few steps. First off, we did expand the field. This was a 27-car field for the Clash for a all-star type event. Maybe we could lower that down. I don't think we needed to expand it. I think we probably should have lowered it. We could have lowered this down to 20 cars or 22. Just a suggestion there to maybe prevent some of the carnage. We had some of the slower cars that typically don't run in the top 20 because you got 27 cars in the field. Cars that typically don't run in the top 20 or don't run in the top 15 as often. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve a spot, but do they really deserve a spot? They were causing a lot of wrecks in the back of the field. We saw a lot of the wrecks. Most of the wrecks we saw at the start of the second half of the race, in the second stage of this race, were at the back of the field, and it's very aggravating to watch. And caution laps don't count, so we had a lot of TV time. We went way over the scheduled TV time with a whole bunch of cautions. Cautions are boring, quite frankly. I mean, I think everybody can agree the cars going around under caution is a lot more boring than green flag racing. So definitely just think NASCAR could obviously take a look at that, take a look at the format. Also, maybe the drivers, like I said, just lack of respect there, and Austin Dillon said it, everybody got better this year. Everybody figured out this race car, and we're going to see that a lot of racetracks, by the way. But everybody got better this year. That's why everybody was so even. You had to move guys out the way if you wanted a shot to win. So that's it. That's really all there is to talk about after an exciting Clash. Like I said, I'm just excited we're talking about racing again. I can't wait to do this. I'll be back on Wednesday night, not this upcoming Wednesday, but Wednesday, I believe it's February the 15th for the Daytona 500 qualifying. I'll obviously do a review on that, the Clash, and of course the Daytona 500. Just 2 weeks away from today, we'll be racing on the high banks of Daytona. So that's super exciting. I hope you guys enjoy the show. Like and subscribe if you like the video, obviously. And of course, about Kyle Busch getting a somewhat solid day today, let's get rowdy.